All right, so are you ready to dive into some fascinating trends?
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to see what we uncover.
Today, we're taking a look at social media in Brazil and Mexico as we head into 2025.
Should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really dynamic. And we've got reports, articles, all sorts of data to pick apart. We're trying to get a feel for how these two Latin American powerhouses are not only consuming content, but actually shaping trends.
Yeah, I think what's happening in these regions offers a glimpse into the future of digital culture globally. Just that energy and innovation, it's palpable.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of global trends, we got to start with YouTube.
Of
I
course.
mean, it's huge everywhere, but Brazil especially is really doing some interesting things with, like, have you seen the surge in popularity of music
Oh,
videos?
absolutely.
Especially Amapiano.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And Brazilian artists are actually hitting global charts with the sound. So, I mean, it makes you wonder, what is it about Amapiano that's capturing everyone's attention?
Well, it's got this really unique blend of like deep house, jazz, and even lounge music. So it's both familiar and fresh.
Okay.
And it's super danceable,
Yeah.
which is, I think, why it's perfect for social media sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. It just makes you want to move.
Exactly.
So it seems like Brazil is not only keeping up with these global trends, but actually exporting its own cultural phenomenon through platforms like YouTube.
I think that that's a great point. And it's not just about the music either. I mean, both Brazil and Mexico are using YouTube for so much more than just entertainment.
Right.
I think there's this real hunger for content that helps people make sense of the world.
Yeah.
Something that digs into social issues, provides that cultural commentary, anything to understand these complexities we're facing.
Yeah, totally. Especially in a world that feels, well, kind of chaotic sometimes.
Exactly.
It makes sense that people are seeking out content that gives them a little context,
Yeah.
helps them find meaning.
I agree. And that desire, that need for deeper understanding, I think it's reflected across multiple platforms. But before we jump to those, I wanted to touch on another thing we're seeing on YouTube in both countries.
Yeah.
Um, have you noticed the rise of gaming content?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Seems like everybody's watching others play FIFA and Call of Duty, and it's not just like kids in their basements anymore. I know a lot of adults who are super into those games.
It's become this global phenomenon, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think those games tap into our human desire for connection and competition. But what's really fascinating is how Brazil and Mexico are taking this trend and making it their own, adding their own spin to it.
Right. Right.
We're
Yeah.
seeing local streamers and influencers becoming really popular, creating content that speaks directly to their audience, with that shared cultural background.
Yeah, it's like they're building their own communities within this larger global ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these communities are becoming super influential, like they're driving trends, shaping how those games are played, even perceived.
That's really interesting. So we've got YouTube and gaming, but what about Facebook?
Ah, Facebook.
Yeah, no, some might think it's a bit old school,
Yeah.
right? Especially in the age of TikTok and Instagram. But the data actually tells a very different story. Facebook is still super relevant in both Brazil and Mexico, especially when you look at community building and e-commerce.
It's true.
In fact, Facebook has something like 111.3 million users in Brazil
Wow.
and 95 million in Mexico. That's massive.
It really speaks to Facebook's ability to adapt. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, all these newer platforms have emerged, but Facebook has kind of carved out its own space.
Right.
It's become a hub for local communities, businesses, and even news. It's
Yeah.
really become part of daily life there.
So it's more than just keeping up with friends and family.
Right.
It's about getting information, engaging in local conversations, even running a business.
Exactly. It's a versatile platform, and
Oh.
businesses are realizing that.
Right.
We're seeing a big increase in using Facebook for direct sales and for those targeted ads as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how businesses are using those Facebook groups to build those like hyper local ecosystems.
Ah.
They can build brand loyalty, offer special deals, and get really valuable feedback from their customers all in one place.
Yeah, it's kind of like a modern version of a town square, right?
Exactly. Businesses and customers can interact on a more personal level.
Yeah, I like that. So we've talked about Facebook, we've talked about YouTube, but what about the elephant in the room, TikTok?
Ah, TikTok.
We touched on it briefly, but I think we got to dive a bit deeper,
Okay, sure.
especially when it comes to its impact on younger audiences.
I think it's undeniable that TikTok has become this cultural force, especially in Brazil and Mexico.
Okay.
And what's interesting is how it's tapping into this sense of cultural pride and identity, particularly for like Gen Z and millennials. You mean like how users are creating content that celebrates their heritage, their language, their traditions?
Exactly. We're
Mm.
seeing this resurgence of interest in traditional music, dance, fashion, all filtered through that short form video format.
Right, right.
It's like a digital renaissance of cultural expression.
And it's not just about looking back, right? It's
Yeah,
about reinterpreting those traditions for a new generation.
exactly. It's giving young people a platform to connect with their roots in a way that's fresh and relevant to them today.
For sure. But TikTok isn't just about, having fun and entertainment.
No, definitely not.
We're also seeing it used as this tool for social commentary and activism.
Absolutely. It's given a voice to this generation that is passionate about social justice, about climate change, about political reform.
Okay.
And because things can go viral so easily on TikTok,
Yeah.
those messages can spread much farther and wider, kind of bypassing traditional media.
It's like this digital megaphone, right?
Exactly.
Amplifying voices that might not have been heard otherwise. But I wanted to circle back to that data point we mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about how the TikTok user figures for Brazil only include those 18 and older.
Hmm.
Does that, I don't know, does that change our thinking about younger people being the main drivers on the platform?
It's a great question. And yeah, it definitely raises some questions about TikTok's true reach among younger demographics in Brazil. It's totally possible that the platform's popularity among those under 18 is even bigger than we realize.
So we might only be seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to TikTok's impact.
Exactly. And it just highlights the need for more data, to fully grasp the platform's influence.
So we've got YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all competing for attention. But where do podcasts fit into all of this? Are they getting lost in the shuffle?
Not at all. Podcast listenership is actually growing steadily in both Brazil and Mexico. And yeah, it's true that podcasts might not have that same visual appeal as something like TikTok, but they offer something different, something deeper. It's a chance to really dive into a topic, to connect with the host, to take a break from all the screens.
Yeah, it's almost like an antidote to digital overload.
Exactly. And just like other platforms, podcasts are adapting.
How
Well,
so?
podcasters are using social media more and more to promote their shows, to connect with their listeners, even to build communities around their content.
So it's about creating a more well-rounded experience, one that goes beyond just listening to the podcast.
Exactly. And this integration of podcasts with other social media,
Mm.
I think we're only going to see more of that moving forward.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here, exploring how Brazil and Mexico are embracing and also shaping the social media landscape. So for our listener, what are some key takeaways? What should they be paying attention to as we move into 2025 and beyond?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that Latin America, particularly Brazil and Mexico, they're not just passively consuming trends anymore. They're creating, they're innovating, they're influencing, shaping the digital landscape in really impactful ways.
So it's like they're writing their own chapter in the digital culture story.
Exactly. And the exciting part is that this story is still unfolding. We're only just beginning to see what these regions have to offer.
So what you're saying is what's happening in Brazil and Mexico today could be a preview of what's to come for the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly. The trends we're seeing, that rise of short-form video that focus on building communities, that desire for authentic content,
Right.
content that's culturally relevant. I mean, these are all trends with global implications.
It's like we're seeing this cultural shift happening and Latin America's leading the way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. And it goes beyond just entertainment, too.
Okay.
We're seeing these platforms used to drive social change, to promote economic empowerment, to connect people across all sorts of divides.
So it's about understanding how these trends might impact, well, everything, really, content creation, how we consume things
Right.
globally as we move forward. What should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, I think we're going to see even more integration between platforms.
Okay.
Like podcasts will become more interactive, bringing in elements of social media to keep people engaged. E-commerce will blend those online and offline experiences even more, and social media will be right at the center of that. And then who knows, maybe we'll see entirely new platforms and technologies that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, it's exciting, but also a little bit daunting to think about all the possibilities.
Definitely.
But I think the takeaway is that we can't ignore what's happening in Latin America.
I agree.
They're really shaping this digital future. So as you continue to explore this topic, I want you to consider this. How might Latin America's unique cultural dynamics influence social media and digital content for the rest of us?
It's a good question to think about. And we've only just started to look at what's going on in Brazil and Mexico. There's so much more to discover.
So to wrap things up for everyone listening, what are the key takeaways you want them to remember from our deep dive today?
Well, I hope they come away with a sense of just how vibrant and creative Latin America's digital landscape really is. It's a region that's not afraid to jump into new technologies, try different formats, and use social media to connect, create, and inspire.
That's a great point. So, we've seen how music is driving engagement, Facebook is adapting to stay relevant, TikTok is winning over those younger generations, and podcasts are carving out their own space.
And all of these trends, they're all connected, reflecting this larger shift towards authenticity, community, and social impact.
For those of you who like to dive deep, we encourage you to check out all the sources we used for this episode. There's so much more to explore, and let us know what stood out to you. What do you think the future holds for social media in Latin America and beyond? Until next time, keep diving deep.